Hey, it's Faodail, and today I'm going to be taking a look at making a track from scratch. I'm going to give myself about an hour and we'll kind of see how we get on with it, and I'll take you through my process. I'll kind of call out anything that might be of interest. But yeah, hopefully this will just kind of show you how I would put together the kind of beginnings of an idea. We'll try and get together a kind of loop and then hopefully kind of expand that out a little bit. So like I say, I'm going to give myself about an hour here. Hey Siri, if this actually works. Hey Siri, set a timer for an hour. Okay, so I'm starting pretty much from scratch here. The only thing that I do have is this chord progression, because typically that can take me a while to like get some chords down and get the kind of feel of a track. So rather than sort of drag that out for the full hour, I've got something down here that we can work with, and I'll let you hear that. So that will give me a kind of rough feel of the track. Let's see, I think we're in A minor here. No. Oh yeah, no we are. We're in A minor, but this fifth I've just raised to, yeah, so this is the fifth of the progression. Is that right? Yeah, so we're in the fifth scale degree of the progression, and I've just made it major rather than minor, which is what gives it that kind of weird kind of quirk to the sound in that last bar, or those last two bars, and then I resolve up to the sixth, and you can see here because that major third is one step away from the third of the next chord, which is the sixth. You can see here if I play the kind of more traditional version of it here. Which also works, but it's just this gives a little bit more interest. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't want to jump too much into the music theory of it because we would be here all day, but we've got a rough kind of idea here, and then what I'll start doing is maybe just building up some ambiences. So let's have a look. I like these, what are they called? Yeah, these melodic hand pans are really cool. Some really cool atmos in here. Melodic loops, textures, these are the ones I'm looking for. Like this, and we're in A minor, so I'm just going to drop down one. And then EQ out quite a lot of the sound here. I just want this to be a kind of atmosphere sitting on top of the chords, trying to sort of tie it together a little bit. Doesn't really work, so let's see what else we've got. That's nice. I like the kind of rain and texture and stuff in the background of this, so that could work. That's pretty cool. So just a little atmosphere layer. Then I'm going to add another one, another kind of Atmos layer, but this time I'm going to come from my Prophet. I actually want audio. I'm just going to record the audio straight in rather than sending any MIDI triggers to it or anything. Okay. So arm the track so I can hear it. Okay, let's try recording that and mess around with the controls. I'm just playing the root and the fifth of the key. Quite often, like the root and the seventh work quite nicely as like a tension builder, but I think because this has got some borrow chords in it, we'll just stick to the root and the fifth just now, and that's going to tie it all together nicely and keep the kind of harmonic center at A. So let's just go and record. Okay, that's probably gonna act quite well as a kind of top sort of tension pad. I do this quite a lot on tracks, just to fill up the top end, and then we're just gonna EQ it a bit. And all I'm doing to get that nice pitch bend is there's a mode on the Prophet called Slop, which basically it emulates like old synthesizers, like old analog synths where the voice chips are starting to drift because the components are getting older, and that's quite often where that kind of nice warm kind of chorusy sound from old synths comes from. So the Prophet, although on your synth it can emulate that. Okay, so let's see how we can make this a bit more atmospheric. I'm gonna drop a Faodail shimmer on it, and shimmer's great because it's a really big reverb anyway, but it allows you to add an octave onto the feedback so that it kind of fills up the top end with this really nice kind of sound. You can hear that. It's nice and chorusy as well because we've got the mod, which I believe will be a pitch mod. Okay, so this is sounding pretty cool. I'm just going to put a utility on the master because I think we're quite quiet just now. Give it about an 8 dB lift on it. Okay, so let's get some bass down. I like to kind of get the I guess like the building blocks of a track down quite quickly so I've got a kind of full sound that I can actually sort of see how it's going to work as a full track. And I feel like the quicker I get these kind of main building blocks down, the quicker I can sort of get out the loop and start expanding it out with a progression and things like that. So let's have a look to see. I'm just going to put an external. What do I want? I want plugins. No. Instruments as well. And just an external instrument. And I have my Moog set up here, which sub 25. And I pretty much always use this for bass. It's just one of these, like, Moogs just have a special something that I don't know, it just sits in the mix well, and it's one of these things that I do feel there's a difference between sort of hardware and software when it comes to a Moog. There's like a little bit of something special to it. So let's see this progression. So go here, here. And all I'm doing, I'm just working out what the base of the progression is, which you can just work out by sort of condensing down the notes, because typically when you are writing a chord progression, there's going to be quite a lot of extensions. It's going to be, you know, your third might be an octave up, you'll have sevenths, whatever. If you just sort of condense it down, and then you can start looking at it to see what sort of chord progression it is. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so this is just got that second in there. So this is how I do it if ever I'm stuck, like I've written a progression and I don't actually know what the root notes are for the bass. I'll go in and I'll just condense them down and work it out this way. Because quite often, or not quite often, but sometimes like the lowest note in your chord is not necessarily the bass note, if that makes sense. Like it may be the bass note, but it's not the root. And that can still be interesting. You can get things called slash chords where you have a different note from the chord makes up the bass. But just now, to keep it simple, I'm just going to keep this to the actual root notes. Should be the same again. Again, we're an A, so this should be yep. Okay, that should be us. So this should be going to my Moog, hopefully. And this is just a preset, like the first preset I have set in my Moog. I've got a couple of variations on this, but this is just like a great go-to starting sound. I'm just gonna give it a little tweak here. Okay, that sounds pretty good, and I'm just going to check the tuning because it is an analog synth and temperature changing things can cause it to go out of tune. Yeah, we're a little bit off here. Okay, so let's see how that sits with the chords. actually now peaking a bit, so I'm just gonna turn this off. Okay, that glide is pretty extreme, and I think it's causing some kind of clashing notes with the chords. Okay, sounds a bit better. I'm just going to do a bit of EQing quickly. I feel quite often like sort of 200, 250 to sort of 300 hertz is usually got a lot of mud on bass. Specifically, the Moog is quite heavy there, so. Yeah, around 2 hertz, 200 hertz. It's pretty subtle. You can sort of hear like with it on, it's like it's a bit hollow sounding. We don't need so much high end. And then I'm just going to compress it a little bit. Go to compressor. Give it a bit of attack, just so it's kind of punching through a little bit before we start compressing it. Okay, so we're just kind of blending the bass a little bit. The last thing I'm going to do is the Moog has some of its functions are very shortcut heavy, so it can make it difficult to remember what everything does. But luckily they have this great plugin which will effectively just let me use the Moog as like a VST. But I want to change, or at least try changing the filter poles. Yeah, that's a bit better. And the great thing about this as well is now anytime I load up this project, it will change the Moog to the preset that's set in this plugin, which is super cool. So it is exactly like you're just loading up a VST. It's great. Okay, so that sounds good. So we've got a bit of a kind of harmonic home for the track now. How are we doing for time? Okay, that's sounding pretty good. I'm going to add one more kind of layer on this, and then we'll start working on the drums. I just want something that's kind of highlighting the kind of leading tone of the chords. I'm going to use some more not synthetic, more kind of real sounds, quote unquote, for this to kind of give it a bit of life. So if you don't know, Spitfire Labs is a great free plugin. It's got a ton of sounds in it. Typically kind of leaning towards more orchestral stuff. There are like synths and things in there as well, but it's yeah, grab it, it's free. There is some paid stuff in there now, but by and large all the free stuff is great. I really like this sound as a kind of top layer. See how that sounds? An octave. And just EQ that really quickly. I'm not going too in depth with mixing anything right now because I could end up stuck here for the whole hour just mixing one thing, but kind of using this compressor more as like a volume control here. Yeah, just give it a bit of presence. Okay, so this is kind of a cool kind of, I guess, kind of harmonic structure for the track. We'll maybe start adding some drums now. Don't want to do that. We're gonna add some drums now, and typically when I'm doing tracks, quite often I actually start with drums. I feel like when I start a track and then I start layering drums, they kind of impact they tend to end up less impactful, which is sometimes what you want. Sometimes you want a track that is more about the sort of melodies and harmonies, but I feel for me at least, starting with drums, they usually end up more punchy and kind of like really like supporting the track. So what I will do is work on the drums here without this kind of harmonic information that can just allow me to hone in. That's like something that it took me a while to realize, is that you can just work on sections of a track independently. You don't have to always be like trying to pile stuff on and making sure it all works together. You can work on independent kind of groups and then sort of start melding their group together. It's just like it's how I like to work nowadays. I find it leads to tracks that sort of mix down easier. So let's have a look at some kicks. Obviously going to use some basic wave stuff here. I do tend to use a lot of the basic wave stuff day to day anyway. Like the drums and stuff are just great, especially these ones, these Dulles kicks, because they already have the key, so you don't have to go and try and figure that out. And what did I say? We're in A minor, so none of these are actually in A. Okay, let's try that. Could work. In fact, that might work even better. Typically, when I'm putting a track together, like the kick that I'm putting into this stage is probably not going to be the kick that I end up finishing the track with. You know, you do tend to, once you have a lot more elements in, it's a lot easier to kind of find something that fits the track better. But let's see how that sounds with the bass just now. Okay, just gonna compress this a little bit. Okay, I quite like this, but yeah, I think it suits. Again, it's the sort of thing that I would probably swap out later on, but let's just put a side chain on just now. I don't really have a set way of doing side chain. It kind of it just depends why I end up grabbing at this stage, but volume shaper is great. There's also a really great glue preset called like 2-bus sidechain that I quite like. It's a bit more of a gentle sidechain. It kind of just depends on the track what's gonna fit. but let's this should be quarter notes. Okay, that'll do for just now. I'm just going to drop this onto the chords as well. Just quickly while I'm on the chords, I'm going to do a little bit of automation. Quite like that on the sort of longer sustained chords. We just have that coming up. We've even layered this up with a piano. Let's try Unicorda. Usually fits in the mix quite well. And then I'm just going to bring these up a little bit, and then I'm going to just humanize the velocity a little bit with this random function down here, and then humanize the timing with this setting here. So it'll be super subtle, but it stops it just being sort of big block chords that trigger exactly at the same time. You want something that actually feels like it's been played in. And then I'm just going to put a bit of an envelope on this, just so it's not totally sustaining the whole time. Okay, let's see how that's sounding. Okay, so let's just group that into instruments just now, and then let's have a quick little look at, see if we can get some drums down. We're about halfway through already. Time flies when you're having fun. So let's work a little bit on the low end. I want to kind of kick tom sort of rhythm here. let's have a look at some toms. Maybe we'll find a loop, or maybe we'll just throw them into a MIDI channel and draw them in. Okay, for the sake of speed here, I'm just going to throw these into a drum sampler. Or drum rack, rather. I can try a bunch of different ones. It's kind of cool. Bring this one down -2. Let's make it A so it matches the root of the track. And let's just go 2 bars. Or 4 bars. And then let's get something in. Actually a fan of that one, let's try that. Yeah, sounds pretty good. These hats are really great, kind of somewhere between a shaker and a hat. Big fan of these, I use them a lot. So I'm just trying to get some drums down as quickly as possible here. Typically this is how I do my drums. I use a mixture of kind of samples and loops and just sort of slowly build them up from the kind of bottom up. Maybe try this. That works better over a bar. Okay. What are we doing for time? This is flying in. Let's maybe look at kind of shaker loop, add some energy. this one's cool. That's cool. Let's maybe get a sort of percussion loop. That's cool. Maybe add a little bit of delay to this. See how that sounds. See how that sounds with the actual music. Pretty cool. And then I want kind of like, I don't know, bongos or some sort of like kind of more MIDI, kind of not MIDI, but sort of mid frequency sounding drums, like bongos or sticks or something like that. That's gonna be kind of cool. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. I'd probably add a snare now, but I'm gonna sort of get a little bit of a structure down so I can kind of see how I want to kind of build the drums up. So let's see what we've got. Let's see how this responds to working with the mod wheel. Okay, that's cool. Kind of slowly fade that in. Here, on the mod wheel, and then just give it a bit of movement. Do this over 2 bars. Go in here. Probably make this a bit more extreme actually, we've got a lot of headroom to work with. It would probably be quicker actually just drawing this in with the mod wheel, but my microphone is kind of in the way of my keyboard just now, so we'll just do it this way. Okay, this is sounding pretty cool so far. I think we'll maybe add some kind of vocal atmos to it that usually like really ties things together. There is something about vocals that like they hit a certain bit of the frequency that like no other instrument seems to. Like especially that kind of high air when you get kind of more kind of ad-libs or harmonies or kind of these sort of ethereal vocals are usually really good for that sort of thing. So what do I want? I want vocals. And then let's have a look. I think there's some cool ones in here. Exactly the sort of thing we're looking for. It's kind of cool. Let's see what we can do with this. I'm actually going to try putting it into, sampler because, sampler's really great for kind of making some nice kind of more like kind of get a nice sustain out of these sounds if you route it the right way, which I'll show you what I mean. I'm actually going to set it up in Sampler first because it's easier doing it that way, and then we can go into Sampler to kind of edit it a bit more. So first thing I want to do is what was this? This is C minor. That's a cool sound. I'm always with my music, I'm always looking for things that have like a lot of texture and stuff to them, because it kind of, it means you're not having to like sort of artificially add that texture later via like something like retro color or adding in a bunch of noise loops or whatever. Like getting actual sounds that have that sort of texture to them and feel real is usually a really good starting point. I want to loop this, is what I want to do. And then, keep doing that. If we go to simpler, so essentially, well, I'll explain it. First of all, essentially all I've done is I've put this into loop mode, so when I hit a key, it'll just keep looping. You also need to turn the release up quite a lot in order for this to work. So effectively I'm just sending a MIDI trigger, the release is then doing the rest, and it's just looping. But if we go into sampler, there may be a way of doing this in sampler, but I always do it in sampler, and we hit this mode, rather than just like when it gets to the end of the loop and going back, it will scan backwards and it just sounds a bit more natural. I'll show you what I mean. So that's a really cool sound. So let's see if it even works here. We'll maybe start adding some effects to it, make it a bit more sort of ethereal. But right now, let's try that. See how this sounds. I'm just going to send it to. I have some sends set up here. I don't really use them all the time, but it's useful for getting stuff down quick. So this is just a black hole reverb I'm sending this to, which makes everything sound huge. Show you. It's quite cool. Okay, let's see how that sounds. Okay, it's kind of cool, but don't want it triggering quite so often. Maybe not even that often. We start just bringing the drums in a little bit. I always like to keep stuff color coded because otherwise I just kind of lose the thread of what I'm doing. So these are the highs, and then I want to sort of fade these in a bit. I don't know really how much I'm going to end up structuring this out in the time. What are we doing? We've not got much longer left, but let's add some retro color. Retro color is really great for kind of filtering stuff in a bit more of an interesting way than just using like an auto filter or an EQ or something. So we'll just I want it to start here and then gradually kind of fade into the original sounds. Fade this in a little bit. Do you know what? This sound might actually be better kind of more as a drop thing. It's a little bit distracting when it's in the intro. Maybe use more of a kind of pad sounds or kind of pad vocally sounds. See how it sounds here. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let's just do a little bit more on the intro, get it sounding a bit more kind of inviting. These all sound great. I kind of want to use all of them. The trick is not to go over the top with this sort of thing. Yeah, that's cool. Put a bit of a delay on it. Oh, no, not that. Okay, let's hope I'm not just crashed this. Nope, we're back. Let's just undo that. You want to delay. Maybe even kind of more wet than dry, so it kind of hits and then builds a little bit. See how that sounds. Pretty cool. Let's see what else we've got. Maybe we'll try double length this, just bring it down an octave. Oh god, no, that doesn't work. What we need to do is just turn off warp, do it this way. Kind of like that the way it is there. Just bang this reverb on again for quickness. Maybe we'll try crystallizer actually. Crystallizer is great if you've not used it before. It's by Sound Toys, and it's a kind of, I don't really know how to describe it. I guess it's a kind of granular delay. You can do octaves in the same way that like Shimmer will add octaves above the original signal, feeding back to kind of give you this like ethereal reverb. You can do the same with this. I'm not going to do that just now though. I'm just going to have it kind of normal mode. Let's see how that sounds. And then I want obviously the drums to drop out here. Oh. What happens if we just drop everything out and then it's just the reverb tails? That's pretty cool. This is very loud. I do like the sound of it though. Okay, so let's kind of expand the drop out a little bit. I think like a kind of nice, kind of bigger pad that's sort of sitting on top of everything, kind of subtly, is going to be quite nice. And then, how are we doing for time? We are about to hit the hour, but I'm having a lot of fun with this, so I think we'll keep going for a little bit. We'll at least try and add some sort of melodic elements, so it's not just chords. So let's have a look at these pads. These dream pads are usually quite good. It's very cool, maybe a bit much, mind you. Okay, that's kind of cool with the cut off kind of leading into the next 8 bars. Maybe do it more subtly in here. Gonna add a bit of this plugin Soothe, which is it just basically gets rid of any like kind of resonances that you don't want. It's like an active EQ, I guess you would call it. You can see all these lines are just where it's ducking frequencies, so it's just like a kind of dynamic EQ that analyzes the sound and kind of knows specifically where to go in terms of what doesn't sound good. Like this kick, I'm going to add a little bit of this plugin Snapback, which is a really great plugin. It just effectively adds a kind of pre-sound onto anything that you put through it, so it's great for like kicks and claps and stuff, and it will add like a kind of lead-in sample almost. You can obviously do this just by, you know, maybe cutting up a hi-hat or whatever and putting it just before the kick, but this does it for you. And it sounds great once you get that kind of suction sound. I'll show you exactly what I mean here. So you can hear that kind of if I turn it off. It's also adding quite a lot of high end, but I'll take that down a bit. It's just like it gives drum sounds like a bit more life and a bit of a, I don't know, it's just quite a satisfying sound in comparison to just starting on the one, having that little lead in. It has like I don't know, it just is like a much warmer quality to it, I think. So let's see how that sounds. Just sits a lot better. Okay, this sounded pretty cool. Let's add some kind of more melodic elements. So the first thing I want to do is I want like a kind of high pulse that kind of builds in the intro and then kind of gives some energy to the, well, what would be the drop. So let's just have a look here. I want a kind of pluck sound. These plucks are all usually pretty great. Kind of good. Oh, that's the timer up, so that's been an hour already, but I'll continue on. What time are we on? We'll continue on for a little bit longer, get some kind of melodic elements in, and kind of see where we are. It's a bit of a pitch bend that I'm... It's kind of cool. Just want to make sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure we have a sound that's going to respond to velocity, because that's where we get a lot of the kind of movement and kind of more of the real feel, rather than just being like a synth sound that's triggering constantly. Because we're going to do kind of like a kind of sustained pulse here. So. Actually, huge fan of that sound here. It's pretty cool. Shaper box. That's not right. Should be the G. Is that right? Oh no, the E. Let's just put it here, save that time. Sounding pretty good. Let's drop a crash in. Always good for a bit of impact. Obviously, basic waves, our very own Bound to Divide. His drums are always excellent. I use them all the time. It's got some weird warping on. That's the one. And we'll add some white noise, or just, I guess, an impact or downlifter. They're always called different things. And FX Megapack. A little bit of a synth fill here. I'm going to bring this out just a little bit more, add some OTT. When in doubt, add some OTT. Quick EQ on it. So this is typically kind of what I would do to get like a rough idea down. From here, I would probably just start structuring things out a bit more. I think what it does need is some sort of melody, which is something that usually I'll spend a lot of time trying to get down, but bearing in mind that we've already been going for an hour and a bit, I don't want to drag this out for too long. So let's just have a look to see if we can get something down relatively quickly. And then, yeah, we can give it a listen and see how it's sounding. So let's look at the basic wave stuff. That's pretty cool. So what I'll sometimes do when I'm sort of trying to work out a melody, obviously the best way of sort of coming up with melodic ideas is just to actually play them in. But you know, if you're not a great keyboard player, or you know you're working from a laptop or whatever, it can be quite good to just take the root notes so you know what chords you're following along to, and then from there you can kind of draw in a melody that actually makes sense when sitting on top of the chords. Let's For right now, I'm just going to solo these. Just gonna add a little crystallizer just to get this sounding a bit more interesting. The best thing to do would probably have been to actually come up with the melody and I'm working sound design, but I do tend to find myself jumping between things just as I think to work on them, which is probably not a very efficient way of working. I want this to go up. That sound weird. If we too much of a jump here. This is up. And generally here I'm trying to kind of follow this pattern of, you can see we have the kind of steps here and then it's kind of a bit more melodic here. The like kind of repeating that sort of pattern when it comes to a melody, if anything that I've just said there makes sense, is kind of what leads to great melodies. I mean, if you think about pop songs and things, they tend to follow certain patterns. The notes might be different, but like rhythmically and the kind of interplay between the notes is there is a structure to it. That's a bit of a ramble, but hopefully that makes sense to you. But again, just getting something down super quick here. And then as we get to the kind of the last bar, it's often quite nice to sort of break out of that pattern. So although we're doing the sort of 2, 2, and then the 4 notes, and then again here with these repeating, I'm going to do it slightly differently here, which is going to add a lot of interest. So I want to take that raised third. And then I want this to kind of step up We go to the 4th here, then walk up to the 5th. We kind of go up. Okay, that's kind of cool. See how it sounds in the context of everything else. Drop out and then come in, so I'm just going to do a bit of automation on this. Add a little bit of saturation here. Bit of reverb, and I think that's a pretty good starting point for a track. We'll give it a quick listen through, see how it sounds, but I think that's a good sort of example of how, you know, you can spend, what's that been, like an hour and a half, and you can get like something relatively decent as a starting point together. Obviously, you know, this needs expanded a lot. We need to sort of fill up the space with a lot more atmospheres, maybe some more plucks and things. And then actually structure it out, but this is a pretty good starting point. It's got some harmonic interest to it with the kind of borrowed fifth, or the borrowed fifth chord. But yeah, I'll stop rambling and let you kind of hear what we're working on here. Oh, in fact, one final thing I'm going to do. I pretty much do this in every track in any sort of builds. I would kind of go on and flesh this build out a bit more, but this is one of the things that I would do for that would be to use this Endless Smile plugin, which is basically just like a riser maker. There's a lot of stuff going on under the hood, like filtering, delays, all that sort of stuff, but it will allow me to work on this build really quickly. Cool. And then one final thing that I often do is I use a utility, and then I just basically turn the width down. So you're basically just using it to take away all the signal from the sides. If you think about like mid-side processing, you're taking it out. I'll show you like a really extreme version of it here. You can sort of see everything disappear, it's just the center, which due to the mix being a bit of a mess here, there's kind of not really much in the center just now. But what I quite like to do with this is just take it down a little bit, the width gradually, and then that means when the drop does come in and it kind of all of a sudden opens back up again, it's just like a lot more impactful, because all of a sudden you've got those sides that are sort of slowly drifting away, and then bang, they're like right out here and it sounds full again. So with that added, we'll give the whole thing just a quick listen so we can see what we've come up with. Okay, so totally unmixed, there's like way too much bass in it, and it's very sort of low end, heavy and quite muddy, but generally this is kind of the sort of stage I would get something to, and then go and take a break, come back and listen to it with fresh ears and see if it is actually something that's worth continuing. I think this probably is something I will turn into a full song. I quite like the progression and the melody and things like that, and yeah, the atmospheres are sounding great. So yeah, I hope that was useful to see. I know personally I like seeing other artists start songs. You can quite often pick up some really good ideas from it, because sometimes that can be the hardest thing, is getting the ideas down. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and until the next time, I'll catch you later.